Hey everyone, it's your host, McLateral, aka McLateral on the Twitter, and I have the pleasure of having an incredible guest with us for our first ever The Lateral Presents. Is going to be more of a shorter form thing where we only have one guest. We don't get into the whole razzle dazzle of it. We just sit down with them, talk about what they know best. And today we have Thor Nystrom, who is from NBC Sports EDGE. He is their lead college football writer. He is their NFL draft specialist, and he is, of course, an award-winning writer. Lest we forget, Thor, it's great to have you on here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be with you.
Awesome. Well, so let's start a little easy. So how did you get into playing fantasy sports? I'm curious.
Oh, man. I've been doing that for a long time. I guess I probably started. I guess I probably started doing it even before the internet, I suppose. My earliest memories doing it were I did it with this is actually funny. I had my dad get a subscription to Baseball Weekly. I don't even know if you know. Do you know Baseball Weekly?
It sounds like something I saw on the magazine rack at a gas station as a kid.
Yeah, I don't even know if they still do it. And sorry if anyone works at USA Today and you still do it, but so Baseball Weekly was this, it was a weekly baseball thing or whatever that USA Today did or does, but you could get a subscription to it, like at your house. And at the end of it, it would be like, 6 pages or whatever, and they would have the stats of the week for every team at the back. And when I was in like 5th, 6th, 7th grade, I had a fantasy baseball league with my friends with it was like 9 or 10 of us, like a 10-person league. And we had a draft, and I was the commissioner, and I hand aggregated the stats every week using the Baseball Weekly.
Crazy.
Yeah, like every single week. And then people would have to call in the transactions to me. It was like, that's how sick we were, or sick I was, and like doing it or whatever. And then, there was no, for the standings, and then, you would have to call me and I would tell you if you won or not, that's how you would have to do it or whatever. So, those were the prehistoric days, literally. They didn't even have fantasy on the internet back then. I think the internet had started because the internet started when I was in, when I was in elementary school is when it started. That was my earliest memory of the internet. But anyway, that's when I started playing fantasy sports, period.
Yeah, I think for me, not quite as far back as that, but my partner at the Lateral, Herms, we actually had this 5th grade teacher who was really into fantasy sports, and he literally would do a fantasy sports camp through the local community college. And so that's how we got introduced. And he would definitely he'd have all the stat sheets. He would come up with all the games, do all the drafting, all that stuff. And those were the pre-internet days. I didn't get outside of that a ton of experience with that myself. I more came in around high school and college where internet was much more of a thing. But it is crazy to think back, you literally sometimes did not know if you won a game or not.
Yeah. Yeah. The internet sure changed it. And the advent of live scoring really changed it. The ability to track your rosters was a game changer, but then, the ability to track the scoring in the moment was, I think, when it really, really became fun. Right.
Yeah, I would agree. Nothing like being able to see up to the second either how much you're beating your friend or how much they're kicking your ass.
Yeah, and for me that was when I was in undergrad is when when the live scoring thing happened, because I remember when I distinctly remember when this happened. When I was a freshman in undergrad, when I went to Kansas, I distinctly remember my friends and I have a distinct memory when we would go to dinner in Naismith Hall, they would have the TVs on in the cafeteria, and we would watch NFL primetime. This is when Berman and Tom Jackson would be on or whatever. And we would all have scraps of paper where we would be keeping track of our live scores. or like the scores that we would have.
That's crazy.
Because at that time you didn't have, like, you also didn't have smartphones. I mean, that was another big thing, another accelerator of fantasy sports or whatever, because you didn't have the ability to have it in your pocket. And so we would all be keeping track of our, the things. And then it must have been a couple years, after that, when, both the smartphone thing and then the live scoring became a thing or whatever. But yeah, like early on in my undergrad time, you still had to keep track of your own scores, and you didn't have the ability to just have it in your pocket.
Yeah, that's absolutely crazy. So was undergrad about when you started to get into creating fantasy content? Was that something you did a little earlier, a little later?
So like I started doing sports writing, I would say was like, that was early. Like I was sitting dead red on sports writing, like from the jump. Like it was either I was either going to make the NFL or I was going to be writing about football. Like it was one or the other. And unfortunately, I was a 6'1", 180-pound high school center, and so I was going to have to gain 120 pounds and make it as an NFL center, or else I was going to have to write about football. And unfortunately, I didn't gain 120 pounds. I fell about 70 pounds short. And so anyway, my athletic profile fell.
Hey, I would have traded you. I was a 220-pound striker as a varsity soccer player. So like we could have switched some weight classes, might have helped a little.
Yeah. I should also mention I came about 9 points short of my RAS as well. But so like my, I quit football heading into my senior year of high school because I'd gotten offered a job at the local newspaper, and I also had gotten offered the editor-in-chief position at the school newspaper.
Awesome.
And so, I was like, well, I might as well, do that for the resume padding thing. And then was applying for colleges, of course, at the same time. And I wanted to go to an FBS school because I had a supposition that, if like the more, like I wanted the work that I did in college to potentially be able to leave campus, like if the team did well and stuff like that. And of course I was a sports junkie. And so I also wanted to be able to see in person, good sporting events or whatever. Sure. And I'm from northern Minnesota, a town called Brainerd, which people will know if you've seen the movie Fargo is based in Brainerd. Yeah. The wood chipper when they push them through that was in Brainerd. And so anyway, I ended up going to Kansas, where my family, a lot of my family members had gone to the University of Kansas. So I went down there, and and so anyway, then I ended up working on the paper there, University Daily Kansan, and then I got an internship covering the Twins, and going back to Minnesota, whatnot, and and then as far as the fantasy stuff, I mean, I'd played it in the past, but it wasn't like it wasn't like it was like I have to cover fantasy or whatever. It's just I'd always loved sports, and writing was just. It's just that like my mom was a journalist, yeah. So, I'm a bit of a yapper like she is, and, a writer like she is. And so, but then she doesn't like sports. My dad does. And so that's, where I sort of got that thing, and those two things just sort of melded together.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that. My dad, he wasn't a journalist, but he did video and film production. So he actually at one point taught journalism majors how to do that. And I was blessed growing up in the DC area with, like, if you wanted a local newspaper with some of the best sports writers, it's tough to beat Mike Wilbon and Tony Kornheiser coming to your door every day. So I was always like, I would love to be a sports journalist. I would love to write about sports. And my dad's like, if you are able to ever do that, good luck, but it is a dying industry. And sure enough, here we are. So we'll see how that future goes. But hey, it's like, I think it's one of those things, if you are passionate about it, there's no way to escape it. You just can't get away.
Yeah. Two things came up when you said that. Number one, talking about your childhood, when I was a kid, where I spent my days a lot of times when I was a kid was my mom. She had an office in town in Baxter at a community college called CLC. where they had a soundproof office where she did her radio shows for NPR. She was a reporter. Yeah. She happened to share an office with a guy named Leif Anger, who went on to write a New York Times best-selling book called Peace Like a River, like 10 years later. And it ended up getting optioned as a film to George Clooney's production company.
Oh, wow.
I don't think it ever got made into a movie, but
doesn't sound familiar.
Yeah. Leif ended up getting rich off it, so it didn't matter. But anyway, like I have all these, like that was back in the day where you cut the film, like with
Yep.
Like you had to cut it with your hand, like with the razor thing or whatever. Yeah. But I would just sit in that room and, you'd have to listen to it long form, the interview, and then, like it would just be a regular conversation. And then my mom would stop it, and then she'd cut it, and then she'd tape it, like literally with Scotch tape.
Oh yeah.
And then, and then she would like intersperse, different things like, whether it was like, music or, different sound, different things. And like at the end of the day, you would gradually hear the whole thing come together, and I don't know if that, had any, sort of effect on, the way that, any sort of development of me or whatever, but literally that was how I spent. Can I swear on this?
Yeah, you can say whatever the fuck you want.
It was how I spent a shit ton of my days coming up. And so I like that was sort of my babysitter a lot of those different days. The other thing I was going to say was just an anecdote that came up. You were talking about the Wilbon and Kornheiser. There was an anecdote about Wilbon that I, just as a sports writer that I think about a lot. He had said one thing that, again, that I think about a lot, where it was he had said something about how he talks about how there was a story one time that he, or maybe this was Kornheiser. It was one of the two. I forget, but that actually it might have been Kornheiser, but that the best stories are the ones where in the early morning, the next morning, he always wants to get up early and drive around the town and go to every doorstep and pick up the paper and pull them. He doesn't want, he's scared for people to read them.
That sounds like Kornheiser. I don't imagine Mike Wilbon wanting to
I think it was Kornheiser. Yeah. Yeah. But I, like that's sometimes how I feel, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, where you really go for it. You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, you put yourself out there with an opinion or like something like that. And for someone like, and Kornheiser has also made, sort of comments about like how he hates to watch himself on television, or he can't read stuff that he's written in the past. And for someone who's essentially a titan of the industry to say stuff like that about himself is really reassuring to hear.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I think like imposter syndrome in general, I think the fantasy community is being more and more open discussing about that, like at least from what I see on Twitter. And then like even outside of our industry, like you get guys like Adam Driver is like, I will not watch anything I've been in ever. And like, he literally doesn't do it. And like, I think they made him go to the premiere for one of the Star Wars movies. And like, he was just literally forced to watch it. And it's just like, even with me, like I will never go back and re-listen to or rewatch any of the things I do. Like as soon as it's over, I'll talk with my producer and be like, hey, like I thought this, and this, like, I could have improved here, could have done this. But like after that, it's like on to the next one. And even then I was telling one of our writers over at the Lateral, while I was going over with him about like editing and properly citing, I'm like, honestly, take a breather, then reread it. Cause like, I know with my stuff, if I take a breather and then reread it out loud to do the editing, like I'll redo entire paragraphs. Cause I'm like, oh, that sounded awful. Like I've definitely got to redo that. So yeah, I think you'll see from a lot of people that it's like not this like cockiness, this self-assuredness where it's like, oh yeah, everything I put out, absolute gold. It's like, no, like I'm really hoping this is good. Like I question myself all the time.
For sure.
Yeah. Along those lines, do you have any advice for new content creators based on your years of experience?
Well, my biggest thing is always like, I try to do stuff that other people aren't. I read a lot of stuff. I really like what I do. You know, I think that's the reason that I went into it. I was always obsessed with the subject. You know, it's just natural for like my mom makes fun of me because of what I do now, because she talks about how like back in the day, like I would have these little scraps of paper because I was like writing down like, because I would do mock drafts.
Oh, wow.
Like when I was a kid, you know, I like stuff like that, or I'd be watching college football games and writing down the stats, stuff like that. I used to keep notebooks where I would make predictions of the college football games against the spread every single week, and then I would track how I did along these various metrics. You know, how was I doing against each team at home, against the, you know, on the road, neutral site, you know, as a favorite, as an underdog, like all these different things. Were there any trends that I was doing, you know, well, you know, whatever, just like very extremely obsessive, you know, type like Howard Hughes type stuff. But for whatever reason, like college football and the NFL draft were like the two things where I was just like super like in the matrix with, you know, whatever. And so, with those two subjects, like I just, you know, I really enjoy reading about them and stuff like that. And so I have a pretty good sense about what other people are doing. And so because of that, I have a good sense of what they aren't. And so what I try to do is just, I try to put stuff out there that is either deeper or else that is not being done. And so, for instance, like the thing like the big board I do, it's 500 players deep and it has comps on it for all 500 guys. The reason I do that is it's a little bit deeper than other big boards, and no one else has 500 comps. It's pretty easy, right? That's self-explanatory. You know, let's see, like. And then like, the UDFA thing. No one else blows out UDFAs like that. You know,
this was my first experience with it, like seeing it that in depth, going through every team, the entire class, highlighting like particular guys all across the board. It was just like, whoa, this is insane.
Yeah. And that's what I try to do. You know, it's like, you know, the big board stuff, the mock draft stuff, it's you know, it's stuff that anyone can do. You know, I don't mean to be derisive about that, but like where, how do you say, it's like you know, this is no different than any other business. You know, and people that want to get into this or whatever, you have to think about it that way. It's no different than any other business. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, the way that you think about that is like, what is not being offered? You know, how can I be of utility to the customer? Right. You know, and so it's pretty damn simple. What is not being offered? Right. What are my skills that, you know, I can leverage to the customer, the market that is not, you know, being offered right now. And so, you know, that's what I try to do, you know? Anyway, that, you know, that's what I do.
Makes a lot of sense. I think it's incredibly sound advice. I know that here at the Lateral, like that's something, you know, we try and do with our content. Like when it came to our waivers, our first year that we did last year, it was always like, we don't want to talk about like trying to pick up these guys that we think it's obvious that you should pick them up, or like, we don't want to be the 13th guy writing about like Dalvin Cook is really good at football, you should draft him to your fantasy team. It's like, if you have the ability to draft Dalvin Cook, you're going to draft Dalvin Cook. But will you draft JD McKissick? Will you pick up Gabe Davis on waivers when he's like the third wide receiver in Buffalo, a team that like uses their quarterback as its goal line running back? You know, things like that are what we tried to focus on. So I think it's a very important point that you made there, and one that I agree with, where it's like you try and find a unique value proposition so that you can connect with the audience in a way that's different from everything else that's out there. But something that is everything else that's out there is 2021 draft recap talk, but we should get into it, especially having someone like you on here who's such an expert in the field. So was there a player where you found that their landing spot really improved your opinion on them? Maybe it's someone you weren't as high on going into the draft, and now that you've seen where they're landed, they're someone you would target in fantasy.
How, like at the top of the draft, middle of the draft, UDFA, like how deep you want to go?
I would say during the draft, so the 7 rounds, not UDFA, because we'll get into that more later. But pick your spot. So like for me, someone like Amon-Ra St. Brown, I loved where he landed because in Detroit he can really break through. So something along those lines.
I agree with that one. Yeah, I agree with that one. My head's been in UDFA, so I was about to shout out Javian Hawkins.
We'll get to him. We'll get to him. Do not worry.
Yeah, we could definitely hit on him. Hold on a second. Let me pull up the position rankings. Maybe you could filibuster on Amon-Ra for a second.
Yeah, no, I can definitely do that. Yeah, with Amon-Ra St. Brown, he's someone that like I think with like Elijah Moore, though you're going to get Amon-Ra St. Brown cheaper, hopefully, especially with redraft. But even in your dynasty drafts, they're people who can break into a very soft wide receiver core. It's not something where it's like, the concern with Jerry Jeudy this year will be like, can he break through a Courtland Sutton? Like there is no one even of the caliber of Jerry Jeudy on either of these wide receiver cores. So to me, that's why someone like him stands out, especially because people were fairly high on him at various points, and then he kind of sunk a little in the draft.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So, okay, here would be a couple of my dudes. Najee Harris obviously is a really nice one. Trey Sermon, I think as well. I'm a big fan of Trey Sermon. Another one to keep an eye on that I'm higher on than other folks is Ramondre Stevenson. Big fan of that kid. Yeah.
You want to expand a little on that one? Because that's a name we've heard come up on on Lateral shows every once in a while. My buddy Herms is really high on him. So what do you love about Ramondre Stevenson and his landing spot?
Yeah, his special sauce is that he's a hammerback that has really good feet. And so what I love about that kid is he, like, right before the contact point, he can change the angle of the defender, and then he has awesome contact balance. So because of his awesome feet. Mm-hmm. And so sorry, I'm not working on much sleep right now.
No worries.
But when the defender's like bearing in on the kid, mm-hmm. Because of the good feet, the shake and bake, coming in or whatever, he forces these off angle type targets on the kid, right? Mm-hmm. And then instead of getting hit flush, he's getting hit off target, and then just ends up getting hit on the side again instead of flush, and then he just keeps charging forward. When Stevenson, he started this season late because of a suspension, from the end of last season, missed the bowl game, and then he started this season late. When he joined the team this season, Spencer Rattler, he started, not as strong as some people thought this past season or whatever. Spencer Rattler, once Stevenson got there, his game accelerated really quickly, and then it was like boom, boom, boom. Like he developed really quickly after Stevenson got there, to the point that when you saw these two early mock drafts coming out, the two early 2022 mock drafts coming mm-hmm. out, like Spencer Rattler was 1-1 in a lot of them. His game accelerated really quick when Stevenson got there. Stevenson was just, dominating, like the Florida bowl game in particular, you just saw him, whatever. Stevenson's a guy with so much power that it's like you watch guys that get too close to it, it's like they get zapped, like walking too close to an electrical fence or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And so for me, that was a really good value pick. And it was really interesting that New England in particular was the team that took him. I think he's a better back than Damian Harris is. And I think he's going to grab the lion's share of that backfield timeshare. And by the way, I think it was sort of bizarre that the Vikings took that Keen and Nwangu guy before him. Like, I think the Vikings, they wanted a punt returner, and so I think that was the justification for it. Sure. But like Ramondre Stevenson profiles to me as potentially even a 3-down back, because yes, he is a hammer back. But the thing is if you look at like his receiving, he didn't get as many targets in college, after he came over from the JUCO, but like in with the targets that he did, he did pretty well with them. Like, you compare him to a guy like Chuba Hubbard, he was a better receiver by far than Chuba Hubbard was in the targets that he got. Yeah. He's a pretty good receiver. So I think he can stay on the field for all 3 down, going forward. So anyway, I'm a big fan of Ramondre's.
Okay. No concerns about Bill Belichick being a guy who doesn't keep anyone on the field for all 3 downs?
Well, early on, yeah. I mean, his rookie season, I'm not sure that he will be a 3-down. I'm sure. Initially, but he has the talent, I think, absolutely, to eventually be a bell cow. But
so definitely someone to eye in those rookie drafts. Maybe not someone you're going to be spending that late round pick on in a redraft league.
Exactly. Oh, awesome. Sorry, my mom's calling. Okay,
no worries. Okay, so is there anyone then where the landing spot really hurt how you'd originally evaluated them?
Let's see. I like let's see. I liked a lot of the landing spots of the running backs. I liked the quarterback landing spots I thought were fine. I'm a little bit lower on Zach Wilson and then the landing spot I think than some other people. So I guess I would toss that out.
Yeah, I get that. For me, I feel like if you're lower on Zach Wilson, you're just kind of lower on him anyway. It's not like him going to the Jets necessarily meant,
exactly.
Well, now I'm out on him. It's like you were already kind of out on him.
Exactly. Yeah, but as far as just a landing spot thing, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's good news.
Yeah. I don't think there was any, maybe one is, I think some people, the Rondale Moore to the Cardinals, I think some people are super excited by that landing spot. I'm not sure if I'm as excited as some other people are just as a landing spot thing. So maybe that's one that I would toss out.
I'm actually really happy you picked that one because that's one that's been in my head. It's like everyone is so excited about him going there. Everyone's like, oh, he'll be like the wide receiver 2 there, like right away. Like, what a great thing. It's like, well, look at what the Cardinals wide receiver 2s have been like from a fantasy perspective. You get the odd games, but from a consistent performance basis, it hasn't been amazing. Especially like Kyler can just use his wheels whenever he wants. DeAndre Hopkins can catch pretty much any ball you throw to him. They love to use the running backs. For me, it's like they also went out and got AJ Green. If he has anything left in the tank, is there any reason he can't still be good? I'm not the highest on Rondale Moore in general to begin with. He was my least favorite of the 2 Moores. Though again, I really liked Elijah Moore, so maybe that's not such a huge knock on Rondale. But yeah, I agree, actually. I think the Cardinals landing spot for him isn't necessarily a huge boost.
Yeah, Elijah Moore is the man. Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. The Rondale, like, so I like him enough, but like that thing's weird because, okay, so you have, you're going to have Hopkins on the one side, you're going to have Green on the other side, and then you have Kirk in the slot, then you have, Isabella, and now you have Rondale. And Rondale at this time, he can't catch the ball beyond 5-10 yards down the field. He's a manufactured touch guy. That's all he was at Purdue. Now they, potentially theoretically can teach him to catch the ball down the field, run routes, etc. Theoretically, that is theoretical. Like that can happen in time, etc., etc. Rondale is very, very good at the manufactured touch stuff. That's something that he will be able to do immediately, but that is all he will be able to do immediately. Like, we'll see the other stuff they'll have to teach him, etc. But like, right now, it's like, how does that fit in with that that team, they have the other stuff. Is he going to force his way onto the field all the time with all the other receivers they have just doing the manufactured stuff? Is he going to be able to do? I just can't see him being able to run all the routes immediately. You can't you can't make that logical leap for him. And if he can't, is he going to be better than Christian Kirk immediately? No way. Like he's not going to force his way onto the field all the time right away if he can't. So that means by definition, he's almost assuredly just going to be a gadget player and a return man as a rookie. Right. And so like the fit and as a rookie, I think you're going to see flash plays and he's going to be interesting, but I don't see him being like like every, down and like, whatever. I think he's going to be interesting, but no more as a rookie.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. He definitely seems more of a developmental play, or like if you're grabbing him in a rookie draft, you're hoping that he can produce down the line rather than be, someone that just knocks it out of the park year one. Is there any sleeper that you have off the top of your head for either redraft or dynasty from this class? Someone that's like probably going to go in your later rounds for redraft, or maybe around 3 or 4 in your rookie drafts, who could have an impact in this year in 2021?
Well, can I say Javian Hawkins now?
Yeah, go ahead. Say Javian Hawkins now. Let's get into some Javian Hawkins.
Okay, yeah. So I'll say Javian Hawkins. I think Javian Hawkins is going to be starting for the Falcons, whether by week 1 or at some point after that. I think he's the most talented back on the Falcons. He was a UDFA. He shouldn't have been, but he was a UDFA. I don't know why. Well, okay. I think I do know why he went undrafted, but I think it was 2 false narratives. I think he went undrafted because number 1, he's inexperienced, and number 2, the NFL thought he couldn't catch. But I think they're 2 bad narratives. The inexperience thing was he didn't break out in high school until he was a senior, and then he only started for a year and a half because he redshirted his first year, and then he opted out after 8 games last season. But he didn't break out until his senior year because he was bouncing between running back and ironically enough wide receiver in high school, and so and that goes to the point of the receiving thing, like we were saying before. So anyway, so he that kid could catch, right? And so he could catch. And so like, I think that's going to be unlocked, and once they start using them, as that, I think the Falcons are going to see that. And one other thing that I'll mention about this that we haven't touched on yet is that Kyle Pitts, who the Falcons obviously took it for. Kyle Pitts, about him. Yeah, you've heard about him. Kyle Pitts is a guy like LeBron James that changes the geometry of the field that he plays. Any field, any court that LeBron James goes on, he changes the geometry of any court that he goes on, right? The spacing of it. Every player that LeBron James has ever played with has had more spacing because of LeBron James's presence. Kyle Pitts is the same way. If you watch Kyle Pitts last year, or the year before, whatever, Kyle Pitts has to be double teamed or triple teamed. Yeah. He's like a magnet on the field. People's eyes, and bodies follow him everywhere he goes. And also pre-snap, you have to follow, and then the safeties has to go back a little bit, everything like this. This opens up space for everyone. Kadarius Toney is a top 20 pick because of Kyle Pitts. Kyle Trask was a top 20 pick because of Kyle. I'm sorry, a top 60, a second round pick because of Kyle Pitts. And so the point I'm making, it's not just that, it's that a team with Kyle Pitts that's running 12 personnel, the defense cannot, by definition, stack the box against that team. Kyle Pitts, when you put him in the slot, you have to put a hybrid defender on him. Mm-hmm. Right. And so just think about it. Like, usually you have your little slot corner, you're right in the slot. Well, once, you put Kyle Pitts there and then you have your inline tight end, whatever. Now your little slot corner has to leave the field. Now you either have to bring, a big safety down, or you're going to have to bring in your hybrid guy, whatever. And now you got to bring in a different safety. Right. And so, but now you can't stack the box anymore. Now you got a thinned out box. right?
Yeah.
You know, and now the Falcons, they got their inline guy, right? So they got 6 dudes there, and they got the 2 receivers out, right? Yep. Well, so now think of their formation. Now think about the defense, right? So this is their base offense, right?
Yeah.
Now think about Javian Hawkins in the backfield. Okay, so
just have room to work with.
Right. So just think about this now as I go into the next thing, but just keep that picture in your head. Okay. This is Javian Hawkins as a football player. This is the negative about him. He's an airback that goes down on first contact. And the other negative about him is he doesn't follow his blockers the best because he's always looking for the explosive run. The good thing about him is awesome acceleration and has the home run speed to hit the grand slams. And that's a reason that he was always hunting for him at Louisville, because he can hit them. He has the gas pedal to hit the accelerator. And once he gets through that hole, if he's got that lane, he can hit that home run. And we saw just a bevy of these at Louisville, you know, home run after home run. And so he's got that. And like I said, you know, as far as the receiving thing, so he redshirted his first year at Louisville. And then Scott Satterfield came in after that season, and his redshirt freshman year, Hawkins broke Louisville's record for rushing yards by a running back, but they didn't throw him the ball because it was Satterfield's first year, and he, you know, his system, they just didn't throw him the ball. But I think Satterfield realized going into that second season, like, oh, this kid has more skills, you know, like we have to adjust our system. Like I think Satterfield acknowledged that he had made a mistake. And so, you know, the second season, this past season, they ended up throwing Hawkins the ball through the first 8 games. They threw him the ball. Hawkins averaged 2 catches per game. And Hawkins, I think he finished with 16 catches last season. He had 21 catches in his career. And he didn't drop one catchable target his entire career. So, 21 catches, 0 drops. So again, I think he's a fine receiver, and I think he's going to keep showing that. He shouldn't have gone undrafted. He's a good athlete. He's an explosive player. Yeah. Okay. And I think he's going to be starting for Atlanta this year. And again, going back to what I started that with, this is a kid who needs to be in space, because, you know, like you think about those airbacks, they are Chuba Hubbard, right? Mm-hmm. Chuba Hubbard was awesome in 2019 when he had a better offensive line, and that offense was better when, you know, everyone was spread out, mm-hmm. right? And he, you know, and like the defenses had to be thinned out, and he could get those just clear lanes, right? And then he could just sprint, because Chuba Hubbard, like all Chuba Hubbard is a sprinter.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, if you give him a straight line, he will like absolutely nail it out of the park.
That's it, right? Okay. He doesn't move off the straight line, whatever. But like when the defense can start to pack in, Chuba Hubbard's dead, right? And so like, you know, like with Hawkins, like if he can get those straight lines, he's going to kill the defense. And so the further the more spacing, you know, that he can get or whatever, like the better he's going to be. And I think in an offense with Kyle Pitts, if he can get on the field, if Hawkins can get on the field, I think he's going to do really well. I think this is a perfect situation for him.
Okay, so definitely someone that people have to be keeping an eye out for. I think both in redraft and in Dynasty, because I'm not sold that Mike Davis will be the starter for 16 games, mostly because he never has been. Like, we saw it in Chicago. He couldn't get it done for a full season when he was counted on. In Carolina, he wasn't the starter to begin the season. Then as the season goes along, he noticeably slows up. Like, he wasn't quite the same after some time. And was it Ito Smith is all else that's left there at this point? I think we've already seen why Ito Smith.
Quadriolison too.
Yeah, but I mean, he's half a wide receiver. Like, you know, he got a touch out of the backfield, but like, yeah, I don't see a reason why Javian Hawkins can't like bust through either. I just really don't. Are there any other guys? We'll get right into UDFAs then. Are there any other guys from the NFC in particular that you have your eye on from a fantasy perspective?
Yeah, let's see. Let's see. I like I kind of like I like Tutu more than some folks.
Okay. How come?
Because So Tutu can do two things that I think can help fantasy people. I think I think he could absolutely be better than Kadarius Toney in the NFL, because Kadarius Toney can't catch beyond. He's another one of them guys that can't catch beyond 10 yards. Tutu does the manufactured touch thing, but he also does the bombs. He also can do it deep. And Tutu, speaking of the deep stuff, what I like about him is, yes, he's small, and yes, he has like a small, a tiny catch radius and all that stuff, and he's, spindly and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. But what you like to see about a guy like that is he makes adjustments to the ball down the field, like consistently. And also he does this stuff like bucket catches and like stuff like that. So he has a very developed game downfield, like way more so than you would think. He has skills downfield, and he consistently made plays downfield, particularly in 2019. I think that's why St. Louis did that. You sort of disagree with St. Louis because they rarely have pick equity. They always take receivers in the second round, and they never address their offensive line. But I saw why they did that, because speed merchants like that are they're just so rare. And Tutu, I think McVay has some plans for what they're going to do with him, and I think he's going to hurt people deep in the NFL.
Okay, so that's, I think, kind of curious with what Los Angeles will do. Like, are they going to manufacture work for Tutu, or is he going to kind of take over a position that we're already seeing within how that offense runs?
Well, yeah, it's interesting because, like they have what's his face in the slot, who's totally different than Tutu.
Is Cooper in the slot?
Yeah, Cooper Kupp.
Yeah.
And Tutu, so the other interesting thing about Tutu is like, he's really good at the manufactured stuff, and he's really good at the deep stuff, but he does not do the intermediate stuff. And I don't think it's because he can't. I think it's because he doesn't want to, because he is so tiny. I think he doesn't want to get hit, right? Like, and that's going to be interesting, because if they can coax him into any sort of intermediate work, it makes him all the more dangerous, because you think about like a major league pitcher, the more pitches they have, the more unpredictable that makes them. Even if they add one extra mediocre pitch, it's just one more possibility that the hitter has to consider, right? And so if like with Tutu, like the fact that he can also take you deep, in addition to the short stuff, like it's just one other thing that the cornerback just can't sit on the one, right? But if they also have to worry about him doing streakers across the middle of the field, it's so anyway. If he's able, if again, if they could coax that out of him, now he becomes a really dangerous player, I think.
Okay, so you're expecting more of, they're going to try and add opportunities for him to be utilized necessarily than like, okay, we're plugging and playing him in a certain spot. I
think initially it is going to be usage specific things. I think it's going to be, I think they'll sprinkle him in with the short gadget type stuff, and then the long stuff. It'll be that sort of stuff initially, and I'm sure he'll get return type stuff initially, and then but I'm sure the idea will be trying to turn him into a more fully maybe like I'm talking about, trying to get him into more of the intermediate type player. He's never going to be able to bulk up though, so like I don't know how as far as the intermediate stuff, like will he be able to hold up, like getting hit over there, or is he just going to be sort of a two true outcome type receiver? That I don't know, but I do know initially he's going to be good at those two things. And so, you can at least use him, sprinkling him in with the other receivers, and they're going to get, good value out of him doing those two things in sort of a platoon basis in year one.
That makes a lot of sense. Are there any other NFC guys that particularly stand out to you
Well,
besides Tutu and Hawkins?
Well, if I would say Terrace Marshall, if the leg thing is fine, and I have no reason to believe it won't because he played just fine last year.
Sure.
I mean, like that thing cropped up in the pre-draft process and scared the NFL, but I don't have any reason to be scared of it because I've seen that kid play just fine the last couple of years. So I would say him, and the transition for him should be fairly quick because he is reuniting with the guy he played for in 2019 that they joined up and they had the greatest offense in college football history. So
it's a phenomenal landing spot for him, I think.
Phenomenal landing spot, yeah. And they could sure use an outside receiver as well. Marshall, I think is they got him at a price point of a steal.
Mm-hmm.
There, and he for me he's sort of your prototypical. I don't see him as a number one, but I see him as a prototypical stud number two. He's okay. And I think that for Brady, I think that's in college. Actually, it's funny because he was sort of a stud number three for them. If you think about it like that, but
they had a couple talented guys.
Exactly, yeah. It's crazy that Terrace Marshall wasn't it's fucking absurd that he was a number three receiver in college. Fucking absurd. But in the NFL, I think if he's your number two, it's awesome. But I think he profiles as an awesome number two, where it's he's that take the top off on the one side or whatever. He's that lanky, take the top off guy. And one thing I liked about him last year was he had shown the season before that, again, that he could threaten deep consistently, etc. Last year, what I didn't like was that LSU did the same thing that the Gophers did to Rashad Bateman, which wasn't fair, which is that they moved two natural boundary receivers into the slot against their will at gunpoint, because Justin Jefferson had left and Tyler Johnson had left or whatever, and they had both of those teams, their starting quarterbacks had left. Morgan had left, but both the quarterbacks that they had were shed or whatever. And so anyway, those two receivers were now moved inside or whatever, and both of them are natural boundary receivers. But anyway, they did the best they could, and Terrace Marshall acquitted himself, just fine in the slot, and what we saw is that he could do those things or whatever, but you saw him show different things or whatever, but different skills than you had even seen before. And so I think he was able to work on even different things than you'd work on his overall skill set. I guess more of the stuff that short and intermediate type stuff that he had not, in the 2019 season or whatever. So he's a kid that I think is very intriguing.
I totally agree. I actually think the fact that he did well enough in the slot, but has the talents that led itself a little more to being on the outside, he'll be incredibly versatile in a team that should know how to use that versatility, with an opportunity for it to be used. With Curtis Samuel leaving, I'm not scared of David Moore. I don't think anyone should be. Perfectly serviceable with some depth, but there's a reason Seattle, didn't care enough to keep him around. Speaking of Seattle, Tamorrion Terry, do you think he has a shot? Maybe Cade Johnson, or do you think Dwayne Eskridge might be the only wide receiver we're seeing from this class that has any impact in Seattle?
I like Cade Johnson. For me, he's the sleeper guy there. Okay. I do like Eskridge, but Eskridge reminds me a lot of Mecole Hardman. So I do think that he has utility, but it wouldn't surprise me at all if Cade Johnson 5 years from now had more receptions for them than Eskridge does.
So what do you like about Johnson so much then?
Cade, he's just so smooth as a slot dude. He's Eskridge is going to provide them more of the explosive plays, just with the, like pouring gasoline over the defense, a couple of times, and lighting them on fire. Like, Denzel Washington to be on fire or whatever. Whereas Kay Johnson's going to be like the million little paper cut guy, sure. Just like, Russell, like, 6 yards, 6 yards, 6 yards, kind of a thing. Like, I think Russell Wilson is going to come to really appreciate Kay Johnson because he's always getting, just separation throwing windows in the short to intermediate area. Kay Johnson is like, the reason he went undrafted is because he's not terribly athletic, he's not terribly explosive, anything like that. He's just really crafty, he's experienced, he has good footwork, he has good hands. It's just like it's not sexy, but he knows what he's doing. He's just a professional. You know what I mean? Like he was super productive in college. He showed up at the Senior Bowl. He did really well. I thought he was just about a lock to get drafted. He bombed his pro day. But even then I still thought, man, I mean, he's probably going to fall to the late rounds now, but he's still going to get drafted, and he did. And I mean, really good on the Seahawks for taking or for getting him, because that was a team that obviously wanted to assuage Mr. Wilson, and they took the receiver first, and then they got the draft's best undrafted receiver. And then you mentioned Tamorrion Terry is another really interesting flyer at receiver. And in Tamorrion Terry's case, why it's an interesting flyer is because Florida State's offense was a shit show the last 4 years, and so with Tamorrion Terry, he's a really talented dude, and he disappeared for long stretches at Florida State, but it's hard to ascertain whether it's because he's not a player, whether it's because he's an athlete who's not a football player, who's just sort of unskilled as a football player, or whether it's because his coaching staff was a bunch of doofuses and his quarterback sucked, and and his offensive lines were like some of the worst Power 5 offensive lines of the last decade.
I think even if the first one is or isn't true, that second one is a fact.
That's right. Yeah,
awful.
Yeah, like for me with some of those different Florida State kids, I in the UDFA thing, I absolutely would have taken the low cost flyers, because we don't know, right? Like, and this was also my point in my UDFA thing about some of those opt-out kids, where it's the same thing, because we don't know, it might be, it might not be. I would have brought him in because the cost is nothing. So like with Tamorrion, like, what you like about Tamorrion Terry is he's one of them. How would you say? He reminds me sort of when you watch him, when you get the ball, he reminds me running of like a Randy Moss. Because he chews up field so fucking fast, but it don't look like it. Yeah. Right, because he gallops so goddamn fast. He pulls away from dudes who look like they're running so fast. And Tamorrion Terry, it looks like he's on a Sunday fucking drive, but he's pulling away from him, right? Like, he's just one of those guys. It doesn't look like there's any effort at all, but it's like, oh my god, like Secretariat. You know what I mean? Like. He's just one of those kind of athletes, and so sometimes it doesn't, like I said, it doesn't look like he's putting in any effort at all, and he, like Randy Moss back at Marshall. Now I'm not comping him to, sure, nothing like that, but like it's one of those really tall, sort of graceful type athletes, where at his highest moments, at his flash moments at Florida State, it's like, holy fuck, like this guy, this guy's got something. But those moments were few and far between, and like I said, the situation around him was always just awful, and so it's like, what do you trust? Is it like, these few flash moments, or the situation around him? I don't know, but like for Seattle that badly needed receivers, bring them in. Why not?
Yeah, another team that badly needed some receivers was Detroit. They got Amon-Ra, the sun god, in the draft, but someone who's, I think, been catching a lot of buzz, and you mentioned him in your article, Jonathan Adams.
Yeah,
people are really hyped on him. Why don't you tell us a little more on him? Partially because I genuinely have a friend who is thinking about picking him up in a league and is like asking me literally before the show, unprompted, should I pick up Jonathan Adams?
Tell your buddy to I actually might, I think I tweeted this out in the moment. I should look this up. But Jonathan Adams had one of the nastiest catches, and I don't even know if the refs might have pulled it off. So I don't even know if like ESPN would have this, but he had like the nastiest catch of last season against Kansas State. It was in the end zone. Do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't think I know the play.
Hold on. I got to see if I got this on Twitter. Jonathan Adams has like the nastiest ball skills. Yeah, hold on. I gotta see if I got this, so I don't like deceive your viewers. I'm pretty sure I tweeted this out in the moment. Hold on a second. Okay. Yeah. So. Yeah. Okay. So So the tweet says one of the best catches you'll ever see by Jonathan Adams. So if it's from September 12th, 2020. So if your buddy or anyone else wants to see that, check that. Yeah, check that out. It's such a nasty catch. I watched it
from like September 12th.
It's from September 12th. Watch that.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So if you're listening to this, Jonathan Adams, one-handed catch, you can Google it. It is absolutely filthy, and I would show it if I had the rights to do that, but I don't have the rights to do that, and we're so small that I don't have the lawyers to fight it. So we're going to move on a little, though. Sage Syrah, what are your thoughts on him? He's another wide receiver that Detroit went ahead and picked up in the UDFA class.
Yeah. So, first of all, the whole point I want to make about what Detroit did with receivers is, and what they did with the draft as a whole. Detroit was really smart with how they went about things. The receiver was their biggest need going in, but Penei Sewell falls to them. So, they did the smart thing. They didn't reach for Devonta. They took the steal of Penei, and then they just kept taking awesome values. Amon-Ra was an awesome value item as a third rounder. And then, they weren't able to address receiver, the rest of the draft because they just kept taking awesome values. And so then in the UDFA thing, they end up getting Adams, who I had as a 6th round value. And then they got Syrah, who I had as a 6th round value. So like you talk about awesome, shopping, like value shopping or whatever. You just applaud him. Jonathan Adams, I think makes that team, again, just fabulous ball skills. And then Syrah is a guy who he doesn't have tremendous athleticism. Like that's sort of his barrier of entry into the NFL. But what he's really, really good at, if he ends up making, if he ends up sticking around, it'll be because of this is deep ball skill. Him and Jamie Newman dominated the ACC in 2019, ringing up deep balls. Jamie Newman got it there, and then Syrah consistently hauled him in. And so, like that's what he's really good at. That's what his special sauce is. Now, that's not necessarily Jared Goff's special sauce. And so I'm not sure if that is necessarily a fit. But we'll see about that. Syrah is good at hauling in those jump balls.
Worst case, Detroit will have a new QB in a year or two anyway.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay. Speaking of some NFC North wide receivers, speaking of maybe getting some help for your quarterback, though we don't know who the quarterback will necessarily be in Green Bay. What do you think of Bayley Gaither? I know you'd mentioned him in your Bayley draft, and like that's definitely a team that needs wide receiver help. Do you think he breaks in to be a frequently used guy? Is this more of like a role guy? What are your expectations for Bayley in 2021?
Yeah, Bayley was one of my favorite, like off the beaten, like way off the beaten track type receiver prospects. It was funny last summer, random story. For my job when I'm not covering the draft, I'm do college football for NBC. Mm-hmm. And my colleague Eric Froton and I last summer we were in San Diego, and we were preparing for the college football season, and we play college fantasy football, and so we were preparing for this college fantasy football best ball draft. Mm-hmm. And we were looking over it was this G5 best ball draft. So it was like really deep, nerdy stuff. And I made this prediction to him that Bayley Gaither was going to outproduce Trey Walker at San Jose State, which was a crazy prediction because Trey Walker had these absurd stats the year before. And Fronton was like, no, you're an idiot and all this sort of stuff. And anyway, Bayley Gaither did. And San Jose State ended up, I think they either went undefeated or they lost their very last game or whatever. But anyway, Bayley Gaither is my boy. I really like him. Like San Jose State really likes him. It's like early on, they gave him a lot of targets in his career. And the reason I liked him early on was because he was a guy that played, he could do both, but a guy in the slot that could go deep. I really like guys in college that can take the top off from various spots in the alignment, but inside if that's where they are, whatever. The difference between him and Amari Rodgers, for instance, this is a reason that I was down on the Packers' third round pick, Amari Rodgers, even though he played with Trevor Lawrence for 3 years, over 4 years that Amari had at Clemson, Amari Rodgers never caught the ball beyond 5-10 yards downfield at Clemson, and he never made contested catches at Clemson. Bayley Gaither caught a shit ton of balls downfield at San Jose State, and Bayley Gaither never played with one quarterback who's going to take one singular snap in the NFL. But he made all kinds of catches downfield at San Jose State. Now, let me ask you a question. If you employed the NFL's most accurate quarterback downfield of all time, would you rather have a manufactured touch screen type wide receiver or a guy who could get downfield and make plays with regularity and guys draped around him?
Literally, as you're comparing the two guys, I'm thinking in my head, okay, how am I going to segue into, and well, that fits Aaron Rodgers' skill set exactly by getting a guy who can get the ball deep and maybe in a little bit of a contested catch situation. Like, that's all he wants to do. Like, that's what he loves to do with Devontae Adams. It makes perfect sense. I totally get it.
Like the Amari Rodgers pick is really good if Jordan Love is your quarterback next year. I really think that Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers is gone next year. I like everything that they have done. Everything is Aaron Rodgers is gone next year. Like, I don't think there's any question about it. Like, I think the Gudikid, like, first of all, that Gudikid's guy's a dipshit. But when I was watching that draft, it's just like, oh my God. Like when they took Amari Rodgers, it's like, that guy's not that's a Jordan Love guy. Like, holy shit. Like, Gudikid's he's doing it. Like, oh my God. Like, it was like they're going to do this.
Do you think that a GM could get away with this in another franchise? I was talking to Herms, my buddy here at the Lateral, and I'm just like, here's the thing. He's the GM at Green Bay. It's a team that is notoriously conservative when it comes to changes in personnel. It's a team that's owned by the fans, so they kind of trust the process a bit. Like, they've been to multiple NFC championships recently. I don't know that it's going to be an instant. They might let Gudikid do whatever he wants to do, at least for a year, and that might be enough time to get plenty of damage done.
Oh yeah. They're they're the most homer sheep-like fan base in the NFL for sure. And it's not just the fans, it's and not all the writers, but there's and this plays into it. There is a sect of the writers there that this is unlike the other teams, in the NFL. Like, I think, the rest of the teams, it's, I think the writers of them, it's, it's like they're, they're journalists, but like there are writers for the Packers that are essentially just fans, and so you have they're sentinels of the team, and so it's like it's this bizarre thing where it's like, it's not just that the fans are, you also have this propaganda machine sort of a thing. And so yes, I agree with you. It's like, from the outside, it seems to be pretty clear that this Gudikid's guy is just driving this organization into the ground. It's like, then you have some of these media guys that are just, like applauding him as it goes along. Yeah. And then as like, yes, I'm a Vikings fan, but like, I'm calling it like I see it. And then these Packer fans are like, you fucking asshole. Like, you're just saying that because you're a Vikings fan. It's like, no, man, like, like I'm happy he's doing it. Like, but like, like if he gets fired, like I hope he gets a lifetime extension. Like, don't get me wrong. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, no, as a Vikings fan, you're just like, trust me, I'm not going to come here and talk about what an idiot I think this guy is. I want people to think he's good, so they keep him around because he's an idiot.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. It's a really strange deal. Yeah. Anyway,
well, less bizarre. Jarrett Patterson going to the Washington football team. Someone that I think there was a lot of hype at various points in the season, particularly when he had that game where he went off for 200 plus yards, I think, for Buffalo. I mean, he was just an absolute dominant force for that University of Buffalo team. Do you think he has a relevant role in that Washington football team offense behind Antonio Gibson, behind J.D. McKissick, maybe even ahead of J.D. McKissick? I'm curious as to your thoughts on Patterson.
Yeah, I think he makes that team. Yep. Washington had, this was only in the last 3 years, this is one of 3 one-man UDFA classes, along with New England this year and Carolina 2 years ago. Carolina, they signed Elijah Holyfield because they had also signed XFL dudes or whatever. Yeah. But Washington, like, I think, them just signing Patterson, I think that shows like they think that he's going to make that team. And I think that he will. What's in, it's not just that he's, the Patterson's a solid player. I think he should have been drafted, but stylistically, it's like, I don't know if you watch UFC, but it's like they say the saying of like styles make fights, but it's like when you look at running back depth charts, I think it's always nice when the backups style is different than the starters. Yes. And in this case, that is very much true. I wrote in my column that like when Patterson comes in for Gibson, it's going to be like a Mini Cooper coming in for a Humvee, and so like, because Patterson's just like a little, like a chicken in the coop, sort of a thing. And obviously, Gibson's like a huge, sleek, athlete, type dude,
he's phenomenal.
Like hybrid type. Yeah, he is. And so, yeah, and Patterson, he can do a whole bunch of different stuff. It's just, he's, smaller and he doesn't have, top end speed or whatever, but he's got fabulous agility and he's very skilled. He's for people out there who haven't seen him, to me, he's just a doppelganger for Devin Motor Singletary. So if you've seen Devin Motor Singletary, you know exactly who Jarrett Patterson is.
Yeah, definitely checks out. All right. One more NFC guy, and then we'll go into the AFC. Austin Watkins, does he have any chance in San Francisco? They're a very top heavy at wide receiver team. Very like soft below that. Like I think there's plenty of room to break in to wide receiver 3 and down on the depth chart. But the problem is they barely use their top 2 wide receivers. So what matter?
Yeah, sure. Well, can you still hear me if I sit back?
I can definitely hear you.
Okay, sweet. Yeah, he for sure does. The only thing is, does he cross the athletic threshold of the NFL? I think he does. He's not a great athlete. What he is he's got fabulous hands. So he's a good. He was an awesome possession receiver in college. He should be a low end possession receiver in the NFL. He only dropped 1 catchable target at UAB. He's cousins of Sammy Watkins. And so like, I do think he should be able to crack that roster. You mentioned that they don't have a lot of, spots earmarked on, at that receiver position behind the starters in San Francisco. Yep. So there should be competition there. They have a lot of bodies there, but yeah, I mean, not a lot of, big time prospects there for the 49ers. So yeah, I do expect Watkins to make that team.
Awesome. Well, as a Niners fan, hoping to see good things from him and hoping that he's able to stay on the field a little bit more than his cousin. Cause, as a Niners fan, I don't need another injured 49ers wide receiver. I've had plenty of experience with that. I'm good.
Yeah, and well, I was just going to say one other thing. People like, we talk about Trey Lance. Trey Lance is, you look at his profile, it's basically an A across the board in everything except what? Accuracy and placement, right? Mm-hmm. Well, how about we get him a kid where, it's for Austin Watkins, what's his best thing? Hands.
Yeah.
Hands catch radius, right? Like Austin Watkins' worst thing, it's the athleticism, but Austin Watkins, what he's best at, it's knowing what to do, running the routes, catching the ball, right? Like he that's what he does. I thought that was a really good signing by the 49ers, and the 49ers are a team coming forward where the next 2 years they're going to be low on draft equity. This is a team that needs to be really smart in UDFA. That's a really nice signing for that team. A really nice signing that fits with the quarterback. You think about like Lance doing the rollout stuff and everything like that. The outlet receiver streaking across the field, like as the secondary option when everyone else is, you have the levels type thing. Yep. Austin Watkins is always going to catch that ball, right? Like it's a free 5 yards every single time.
Yeah, well, I'm certainly hoping that he's an integral part of that offense. I am expecting good things from that offense this year, as opposed to last year where it turned out maybe our backups weren't so good, unlike what everyone on Twitter was saying, where it's like, oh, look at Nick Mullins. He could be the starter of that team. It turned out no, he couldn't. But I digress. All right, let's move into the AFC then. Are there any guys? I went through the article, I read it. There was a lot of amazing stuff in there. I've got a list of guys I'm interested in talking about, but I'm curious, the guy who wrote it, are there any guys that right off the top stand out to you from a fantasy perspective from that AFC UDA group?
Why don't you just pump names at me?
Okay. Kenny Yeboah. The Jets starting tight end is Chris Herndon. Whoop-de-doo. Can Kenny Yeboah replace the Chris Herndon? And even if he does, will it matter? Will he still be irrelevant?
I found it hilarious that the Jets signed Yeboah on just multiple different levels. First of all, they gave Yeboah got the record for UDFA bonus. It was the first 200K guaranteed UDFA bonus in history. Second of all, I comped Kenny Yeboah to Chris Herndon.
I saw that.
Yeah, so it was like the dueling Spider-Man gif. Yeah. Once they brought him in, whatever. So that's really funny. I mean, like their games extremely similar. Their athletic profiles are extremely similar. As far as yes. I mean, like they are very similar. I know that Herndon went much higher in the draft, et cetera, but Yeboah is a guy that didn't break out until kind of late. Like he started his career at Temple. That system was not the best fit for his game. And what's interesting about Yeboah is, so he was there, and then he was going to transfer to Baylor, and then Matt Rule took the Panthers job. Yeah. And so then that Yeboah was like, oh no, what do I do? And so then he's like, well, I guess I'll transfer to Mississippi for my last year. And, and then, with Lane Kiffin or whatever. And it turned out to be the best decision ever, because then Yeboah turned into an awesome move tight end, and Matt Corral, like his game, shot up or whatever. And then Elijah Moore was awesome. And Mississippi turned into this, super fun team or whatever. Like that was the system for Yeboah. I thought that Yeboah was going to get drafted. He's a fun player, and I think he can do things in the NFL. Two things about him: he can catch, he can move, and the other thing about him that I noticed last year is he can do blocking things. I'm not sure if he can be like an inline dude. I'm not sure about that. He maybe sporadically, but what he can do for sure is do the move block and stuff. I know for sure he can be an H-back. He could do the lead block and stuff, and he can do like the motion block and stuff and pick guys off in space. He can absolutely do that stuff. The inline block and stuff, again, sporadically and matchup wise, I don't know if I would always trust him like on edge monsters just as a rule, but I saw him in all sorts of the lead block and stuff, again, like the motion stuff and in space, and he handled himself well when he was in the slot, was always blocking the nickel guy. So I like that guy's game a lot. He's absolutely going to make the roster. I would actually be surprised if he wasn't at least tight end 2.
Okay.
He is going to make the. I mean, like, you don't give the guy the record for the UDFA, and he doesn't make the team.
That would be weird.
Exactly. And then the other thing, of course, is they took Elijah Moore, so it's like, he's playing with his collegiate teammate.
Yeah, that's one that like stood out to me immediately. It's like, okay, Robert Saleh, obviously he's not running the offense, but like he's seen what a good tight end can do in San Francisco. Chris Herndon's not it. Ryan Griffin's probably not it. If he will be, it's news to me. Like, there's no reason this guy can't break through. He's got the skill set. He can block enough that it's not quite a liability. Like, you may still need to bring someone else in to do more of the blocking tight end role, but that means that like he still has some value on that front in addition to being the receiver. So are you expecting any fantasy relevance then in 2021, or is it more of a like, you definitely should be looking at this guy in your rookie drafts, but maybe for redraft, just keep an eye on your waiver wire?
Just because, I'm not sure that an undrafted guy, especially at that position, because tight ends is this, one of the slowest positions, I'm not sure for next season. However, for, the dynasty stuff, yes, absolutely. Okay. Yes. Because, I would. And one other point that I'll make on that is, last year, Matt Bushman got hurt, and he didn't play on the BYU offense when they played the cake schedule and Zach Wilson's stats blew up or whatever. But if you go back to 2018, 2019, Dax Milne and those guys, they were on those teams. Matt Bushman, he was the dominant receiver, the tight end. He had way more targets, way more receptions and touchdowns than Dax Milne and the receivers in the two previous seasons. I think Zach Wilson, he'll pepper the tight ends with targets if they're, he'll target them in the NFL if they are equivalent talents or whatever to the receivers. So something to keep an eye on.
Oh yeah, well, definitely interesting. Okay, another one. Tim Jones. Can he break through that incredibly crowded wide receiver depth chart in Jacksonville?
I think Timmy Jones makes that team. Tim Jones was on a shit show of a program in college. That was one of the craziest situations I've ever seen last year at Southern Miss. They went through 3 different head coaches. It was like during the season, it was absolutely crazy. And I think they went through 3 different starting quarterbacks too. Like, it was just fucking crazy. And he still put up like nearly a 90 PFF grade, like something like that. He's a really, really good player. He had a good pro day workout as well. And yeah, I do. He got top 10 UDFA guarantee money. And that was really telling to me, not just that Jacksonville gave it, but you don't get top 10 guarantee UDFA money if there's not a ton of competition. He might have even, I think he got top 5. Not just top 10, but again, like, that's not just indicative of the team saying, yeah, this guy's probably going to, make the team, but also that the rest of the NFL was, is in on that kid too. Yeah. Jacksonville obviously doesn't have the most at receiver, in terms of depth. So yeah, I do. And, I think where you're going to see that kid early is probably in the slot. He's a reliable kid, like his hands, and the athleticism is going to play at the NFL. He's a reliable target, runs good routes. I think he was super underrated, and I think the reason why was because of his college situation. I think he sticks.
So who do you think is going to be kind of the odd man out then in Jacksonville? I mean, they got Chark, they've got Marvin Jones, who they paid some money to bring in. They got Visca, who everyone loves. They've got Colin Johnson, who was a fantasy darling for a hot minute. And now they got Tim Jones. I think, are any of the holdovers from the previous era still there? Your Keelan Coles, your Dede Westbrooks, your Chris Conleys, or any of those 3 still on the roster?
I'll look up the depth chart.
Because for me, it's like he jumped out from a talent perspective, but I'm like, they can only literally throw so many wide receivers on the field at once. They can only have so many on the roster, especially like guys who you're expecting to contribute to an offense rather than like, a special teams guy. Like actually Kendrick Bourne always made sense to be kind of a hot free agent from just the fact that he's so versatile and can do special teams in addition to playing some offense. But yeah, who are you thinking?
So I guess the starters are Shark, Marvin Jones, Visca, and then the backups I see listed here, it's Colin Johnson, Philip Dorsett.
Oh God, I forgot about Philip Dorsett.
Yeah, and then it's a bunch of bums. It's like Jamal Agnew, Josh Hammond, Terry Godwin, Jalen Camp.
Okay, so the old guard left then. You're Keelan Cole, Chris Conley, D.D. Westbrook group.
John Vay Johnson. Oh, and then Amado Rabebe. Yeah.
So that sixth spot then on the depth chart is totally his for the taking.
Yeah, Timmy's going to get that.
Awesome. Well, definitely got to keep an eye out on him. Kickers. Why not? Not everyone's going to talk about a kicker. We're going to do it here. Can Alex Kessman beat out Michael Badgley, who was just not very good in Los Angeles?
Yeah, I think he will. Yeah. That dude, he missed all of his, or maybe not all of them, but
it felt like it.
Yeah. Every single, what was it? He missed all 9, or I'm sorry, I'm saying that sentence backwards. All 9 of his misses were from 40 plus yards. And, when that happens, you have started to walk the green mile of your NFL career. And it wasn't just telling that they signed a kicker. I thought it was telling specifically the kicker that they signed, who's the NCAA record. He broke the NCAA record for percentage of field goals hit from beyond 50 yards. I think the Chargers were clearly saying, like, we're sick of the shit of someone who can't, hit long field goals. So yeah, I think, barring, that kid, or they also signed another dude in the offseason, so it's going to be a 3-headed monster. But yeah, barring the incumbent, like clearly out kicking the other guys, I would expect a new kicker in for the Chargers next season.
And do you think that'll shake out prior to week 1, or are we going to be given the opportunity to see Badgley miss more field goals?
Well, I mean, like, it's certainly going to be, a camp competition for sure. But, it's like, you have a whole new, guard there for the Chargers. And so, it's like no one's going to have anything handed to them. It's like, if you went in and you were evaluating whole new guys you didn't know before. So, I don't think anyone's going to have a head start or anything, but the new guys coming in, they're looking over the stats from last year, and as I did, and they're whatever that Rich something or other, he does these special teams rankings every year, and the Chargers were last place in the NFL in the aggregate. Like they were last place in a lot of special team stats, but in the aggregate they were last place. And you're not going to be a good NFL team if you finish last place in special teams. And so you've seen all off season, the Chargers have gone about all these different transactions to fix it. And some of them are just about signing, returners or gunners and different stuff like that. And then in the UDFA, it wasn't just, it wasn't just the kicker. It wasn't even just the long snapper which they signed, but some of their other signings, I think were directly for special team. Like they signed the Oklahoma State linebacker, Amen, I'm not good with his last name, but anyway, I think he was signed specifically because he's one of the best coverage special teams guys in the draft. He's just the coverage ace. And I think the Chargers specifically targeted him because of the boost they would get to their coverage team.
Makes a lot of sense. All right. I'm going to so this guy wasn't a UDFA, but another kicking competition potentially in 2021. Who do you think is going to be the Bengals kicker for week 1? Is it going to be Austin Seibert, who we saw a little bit of last year, or is it going to be Evan McPherson, literally the only kicker drafted in this draft?
Oh, man. I don't know. I'll go the Oklahoma kid.
Okay. Okay. I
I'll go
wanted.
Boomer sooner.
I want it to be Siebert just because I'm in a best ball league that's drafting right now, and one of the guys drafted McPherson and sniped me. It's in a league where kickers actually really matter because they get yardage bonuses for literally every yard they score. I think they score more than anyone but quarterbacks in this league, and there's 2 kicker slots, and it has turned the bottom half of this draft into an absolute shit show, which has been incredibly exciting. Like I have 0 complaints about it, but one of my buddies, he definitely sniped me on Evan McPherson, so I'm hoping it's Siebert. Okay, one last guy that stood out to me from the AFC UDFA's, Puka. Does he have any shot at jumping ahead of Samaje Perine in that Cincy depth chart?
I don't know about that, but he intrigues me a lot because he's a good receiver. What concerns me about Puka is, it sort of goes back to the Javian Hawkins thing of like, he's super explosive, but he's even more so than Javian Hawkins is. He just does whatever he wants when he gets the ball. He's always just sort of headhunting for, just doing whatever he wants to try to hit the home run. He doesn't follow his blockers whatsoever. Because, he is a really explosive kid, but I think Puka probably picked up this habit from high school where it's just like, he's following a GPS in his own head. He doesn't care what the blockers are doing, but, again, he has explosion, and he has some home run speed too. I don't know if he's quite as fast as Javian, but he does have the speed, and he does have the explosion. The other thing that I really like about Puka is, again, the awesome hands, really, really good hands. And unlike Javian, Javian, again, it's like, I was making the argument that it's there, it just wasn't shown as much in college, but Puka, it was. They threw him the ball a ton in college. And so my argument with what Puka, what I would do with him is I would, especially in Cincinnati, especially with that situation, is I would try to convert him into more of solely receiving back dash slot receiver. Like at LSU, you remember in 2019 when that offense became super duper scary was when Clyde Edwards-Helaire, when he was, primarily moving into the slot, motioning into the slot, and they went 5 wide.
Yeah.
If, I just imagine Puka, like if it went to something like that, obviously he wouldn't be taking Mixon off the field or nothing like that. But like, if they turned Puka into a slot type situationally, I think that would be the best use of his skill set on a team like that. So that's between that or in the backfield as a receiving back, where it's situational thing, maybe you take him off, you could give Mixon a blow and then he's a receiving back, situationally like that. But that's how I would use him. It would be as a receiver solely. I wouldn't be handing the ball to Puka a ton again, because he's just Puka ain't listening to you when you hand him the ball. Gotcha. When he get the ball, Puka's going to do what he wants. But when you throw it to him, he's going to catch it. But it's like when Puka get the ball, he's going to do what he wants.
So interesting prospect from an NFL perspective, but maybe not the guy to get cute with in your rookie draft unless it's a really deep rookie draft.
Yeah, but later on, I do think that there's intrigue, but probably you would just have to see how it goes,
how
because
fall out.
Yeah, because someone might get. He might be overvalued in something like that, but I do think he is intriguing because of the spot he went in. But for me, I just don't know how he would be valued in something like that.
Yeah, sure. Anyone else that you wanted to cover from the AFC? Those are all the guys that really stood out to me from a fantasy perspective. Felt like it was a little lighter than the NFC on that front, though there was plenty of other value to be found in the AFC UDFAs.
I would be remiss if I didn't bring up Matt Bushman, my boy. I love Matt Bushman. The landing spot I was disappointed by, because I was really hoping you didn't go to a team with a good move tight end, because I thought Matt Bushman would be able to play and contribute immediately for a team that didn't have one. It was interesting that he, even though he did go to one, which is disappointing, but it was interesting that it was the Raiders that targeted him, because the Raiders are shrewd with UDFAs, even though they suck at drafting, especially in the early rounds. And they let their UDFAs get on the field early too. So that's going to be interesting. I'm not sure what they're doing there. If they have a plan, do they have
love to have too many tight ends though. I mean, we saw with them bringing in Jason Witten that one year. It's like, well, you've got Foster Moreau, you've got Darren Waller. I mean, you have Darren Waller. Like, why are we spending this capital on another guy that could contribute right away at tight end?
Yeah. And, who knows? I mean, maybe, if Bushman pops, in camp, like I think he could, because, to me, Bushman had the second best ball skills in this class, of this tight end class behind Kyle Pitts. Yeah. Let's see if I got I was going to see.
Yeah. When it comes to this tight end class, just about everyone is the best aside from Kyle Pitts, who's like top of it in everything. So when someone is top of the class, it's obviously but underneath Kyle Pitts.
Hold on, just forgive the. I got to close out of this tab, but I wanted to give you guys this stat real quick. I don't know if you can hear that, but hold on a second. Okay, so here's this stat. So I think I mentioned Bushman got top 10 UDFA guarantee, but just a couple. Okay, so Bushman between 2018 2019, 117 targets. He only dropped 2, and then between those 2 years, he had a 13.0 A dot in 2018, 11.8 A dot 2019, and you got to remember. He was playing with Zach Wilson those 2 years. That wasn't the Zach Wilson nor the BYU offense of 2020. Those were the prehistoric BYU and prehistoric Zach Wilson. If Bushman had played with them in 2020, he would have absolutely gone off. So, for me, he is a really good player. He reminds me a ton of Mark Andrews. He's the same age as Mark Andrews. They came out in the same recruiting class. They have a very similar athletic profile. They have similar games. It's everything like that. It's just that Bushman's coming into the league a few years later, and he ruptured his Achilles last year. So we'll see. If he pops in camp, what are the Raiders' plans? Are they willing to play him and Waller at the same time? I'm not really sure, but Bushman's a guy that I'm very intrigued by, because of those fabulous ball skills.
Awesome. Well, definitely someone to keep an eye on then. I would say it'd be interesting to see if they do use him this year, especially because he's so talented at catching the ball. We know that Las Vegas likes to use the tight end. So theoretically, if they wanted to use Darren Waller a little less, they could always go that route. So I think it covers everything on the UDFAs, except for I do have one question. I think I'd be remiss if I didn't ask it. Why are UDFAs so important?
Well, because they make up 20% of the league. First off, so they make up a fifth of the NFL, and their acquisition cost is nothing. So, just by definition, it's getting 20% of something for nothing, and it's not just 20% of the pie for nothing. It's that. Some of that 20% is all pro caliber, like for instance, Adam Thielen, is one contemporary example, or, you go back, John Randall or Kurt Warner, or, different guys like that, you can find gems here, or you just go the past 3 years with the running backs,
Eckler, James Robinson.
Exactly. And then this year there will be one, it could, that's just the way it goes. My supposition is it's Javian Hawkins. It's not Javian Hawkins. It's going to be someone else. I promise you.
Yeah. Javian Hawkins really feels like he's got a shot for me. I mean,
yeah, you just make the educated guess on it. you know, that's who I think it's going to be. But if, you know, like I said, if it's not, it's going to be someone else, you know? So like, it's, you know, it's fun to look through it. It's fun to, you know, quantify the different stuff and make educated guesses and stuff like that. But it is not, you know, when I started doing this, people thought it was silly or it's like a navel gazing thing. It's not. It's not, like, because studs come out of it, immediate contributors come out of it, and 20% of the NFL comes out of it. It's a real thing. And by the way, NFL, there are some NFL teams that don't take it seriously, and those teams are fucking stupid. Like the Houston Texans are fucking stupid.
Yeah, but they were already. Like, they're not only stupid because they don't look at UDFA.
Yeah, like you look at their UDFA class this year, they are so fucking dumb. Like they had you know, this season obviously they have the worst roster in the NFL, and then, you know, because of the Laramie Tunsil deal, they have 2 third rounders, 2 fifth rounders, and whatever, like a 6th rounder, right? Yeah. So they have absolutely no picks to fortify that roster. And then, in my opinion, this was the best UDFA class of the last several years because the NFL had less information on these prospects. And so you were going to have this scenario where a lot of these prospects were filtering through the draft because the NFL just didn't have enough information on them to, you know, risk it in the draft. So that, you know, they were going to filter through a lot of these opt-outs or whatever. So you had this scenario this year where, you know, you could take, you know, flyers on these kids in UDFA, but it's not flyer at all because it's a no risk thing, right? Like Jamie Newman, is that a flyer in UDFA? No, because all you got to do is give him $50K. That's not a flyer in the NFL. It's couch change. So it's like for the Titans, you could have recouped all your, not completely blowing the first and second. Well, who knows? I mean, you know, if some of these guys popped or whatever, you know, just by, you know, spending $1 million in, you know, in UDFA, you could have signed 10 of these kids, right? Yeah. But like they didn't. They signed, you know, one decent one, and then they just signed 3 guys that they're going to cut in July. I don't know why. Like, I understand why other fans don't take it as seriously as I do, but when organizations don't, it actually makes me upset because it's like, you guys are fucking dumb. Like, how do you not get it? You know what I mean?
It feels like one of those things, like in fantasy, we talk about like league winners. Like, you grab a certain guy or you employ a certain strategy, you call it a league winner. To me, looking at UDFAs properly and properly assessing that sort of thing seems like a league winning strategy to me.
Well, you know, like, so, you know, this class, there was, I think there was 665 players declared officially. Right. Mm-hmm. Now, you know, in the Texans front office, I don't know how many people are employed. You know, let's say 100, I don't know. Right. That's their job. Right. I'm one person.
Yeah.
So, you know, for these months, I was able to scout 650 guys.
Quite a few.
Those 100 people, what the fuck are you doing for these months? And it wasn't just that, you know, in the fall when I was watching these, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, it is.
It was only 650.
It's definitely impressive to see how incompetent certain sports franchises are. And I always, especially like in the lead up to the draft, I thought it was a point that I thought would be important to hammer home. It's like, remember, you are potentially competent. So what you think these franchises will do, don't be surprised if they don't do something else, because franchises can be shockingly incompetent. There's a reason that there is turnover in these places all the time. It's because there are people there who are not good at their jobs. So don't be surprised when they don't like target the player you were expecting them to target and instead go for someone completely off the wall that you didn't think they had a need for, because, well, that's what happens in this.
There needs to be a bigger blow up in Houston. Seems like they're...
Well, the problem is the owner is it, like Houston. It all starts from the top. That owner is not going to make that franchise any more competent anytime soon. And until that change, I cannot see with Cal McNair being there how that franchise gets better.
For sure.
All right. 2022 draft preview, and then we'll get out here. And this will be quick, basically, because we're so far out. Are there any guys already that you think like you need to keep an eye on this guy during the 2022 college football season for your fantasy team in 2022?
I haven't started my work into that yet.
Reasonable.
Yeah. So, the Spencer Rattler would be that'd be one. It's not as good of a quarterback class next year. But that would be one name. Howell would be one of the others, but I will caution people. I got to watch Howell closer, because I will caution people that, that is a very, it's not, well, it is sort of a wonky offense. It's a gimmicky offense, I guess I would say. Mm-hmm. So what Longo does is, it's an offense that limits the read of, I'm sorry, it simplifies the read of the quarterback. It basically, it's a hybrid of the air raid with a downhill running game. Last year, obviously, UNC, they had Javonta and Michael Carter and Diami, Daz, whatever last year. And in fact, this is one of the reasons why I didn't like Diami. This dovetails into the same reason. It's like, there was a lot of the RPO stuff, and it was like you had the pre-snap read off of the safety, and Howell could put, you put the ball in the belly of the, depending on where the safety, is aligned, whatever. And then you put the ball in the belly of the running back, and you're looking up, whatever. And then, if you're going to throw it deep, whatever. And with Diami would just be running deep every single time. And Diami would get the deep ball if he was one-on-one. And if Diami was not in an advantageous one-on-one shot, he would not get the ball. Right. And so, different, but like Howell, every time he was throwing one-on by extension, it was these, it was like, you know what I'm saying? It was like, so it was an easy read and into the advantage, which it's a great college system, right? Like, because every single run was to the, the side of the field that was, thinned out, and had every single pass.
He's not going to be that guy next year where like the first thing we say about him is like, well, he ran a pro style offense in college.
Well, exactly. It's the system is extremely user friendly, and it is designed to direct the ball to where the side of the field, or in the direction where there is the less defenders, and put the quarterback into situations where he's directing the ball to where there's less defenders, etc. But yes, it's not like in the NFL, the decision making process. It's in the moment, right? It's a fluid thing. Whereas Longo's, it's a part of the decision is the pre-snap. That's half of it. It's like, okay, you have to see where the dude is aligned, right? So that's half of it. And then the other half is right after the snap. It's like, where was his first two steps, right? And okay, and now you know what you're doing with it, right? Mm-hmm. And so like, that's it, and so like, like, how do you evaluate Howell off of that? It's like, does he have a good arm? Yeah, he got a good arm. Does he got great stats? Yeah, got great stats. Is he pretty athletic? Yeah, but I don't fucking know. Like, people are putting him in the top 5. It's like, wow, it's the same shit with Wilson, where everyone's like, oh, he's, the Jets fans are like, the Jets fans hate me. They're like, you fucking asshole. But it's like, have you guys ever seen him beat a good team? Did you, have you guys, like,
you gotta be careful with that. I said
I don't have to be careful. All I got to do is tell the truth, man. Like, and by the way, next year all I got to do is tell the truth about Howell too. But like, like,
hey. I came out with the Zach Wilson, like he looked like he was playing high school teams, and everyone's just like, oh well, he beat like all these guys. I'm like, it wasn't last year, and like he's maybe like played a couple of competitive teams his entire career. Like, I watched a highlight reel of his in like some film work leading into this draft, and my response was just like, I literally feel like I'm watching high school game film.
Yeah, they played a dog shit schedule last year. Yeah. Yeah, all draft process, I was like Jon Snow against the horses coming, like this.
Oh man. Well, Thor, it has been a blast. I originally had it slated for 45 minutes. We decided, fuck that. We're going right through that. It's now been an hour and 44 minutes exactly. Thank you so much for joining us here at The Lateral. Why don't you go ahead, plug what you got coming up for everyone who's been watching this. We might end up putting this out on Spotify as well, so in case people listen to this, where can they find you? What's the latest work you got going on?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at Thorku, THORKU. And then you can find my work at NBC Sports EDGE and all of our NFL draft and college football work at NBC Sports EDGE on the college football and NFL draft section. This week was my deep, ridiculous dive into the UDFA classes for both the NFC and the AFC. I ended up, for some reason, writing 20,000 words on them. So check that out. Check that out. If you didn't check out I got the grades, for the draft and all that sort of stuff. But this week was the crazy deep dive on the UDFAs.
Well, I'm certainly glad you did it. Like, I have to say, there's no way I am not doing research on that ever again. That was so worth reading, the 20,000 words that you did on that. Thank you so much on that front. Again, it is I, your host, McLateral, aka McLateral FF on the Twitter. You can find me there. You can find me on the Lateral FF on Twitter as well, which is the Twitter for our blog. You can also find me on the blog, www.thelateralff.com. And you can find me here later tonight when I have special guest Angelo FF, who does Angelo analysis. He's a phenomenal film breakdown guy. It's going to be a blast to have him on. And then also we have Bob Harris, the legend, coming on right after he wraps up his SiriusXM show. So I cannot wait for that, just like I could not wait for this show. Again, Thor, thank you so much for coming on. That's going to wrap it up for us. Until next time, see ya.